All right, good evening, and thank you for tuning in tonight. If you are out there, kind of getting back to something a little more normal for me, we're actually back in the church office. Thankfully, we have electricity back over here again. There's a couple of things that I couldn't figure out tonight, so I'm sorry about that. Some of you have been joining by a Zoom call. I didn't send a Zoom invitation out tonight. I thought I knew how to set this system up with Zoom, but I don't. There was something that I couldn't get figured out. Didn't really have time to figure it out today, but hopefully by next week I'll have that all figured out if somebody wants to jump on a Zoom call and have some discussion with this. I would like to have a little more interaction, but I think probably over the next couple of weeks, some things will be changing, and we'll be trying to figure out how to do this and how it's supposed to work. But if you're out there listening in, thank you for being here. I know we've been a little scattered the last couple of weeks trying to make sure we're on a consistent schedule, and hopefully some things with that are also getting worked out, and I'll be able to be a little bit more consistent with a lot of the things that we're doing. So we're in 1 John chapter 2. We're looking tonight at verses 7 through 11. We actually might get through a little bit more than that. I was looking at that today thinking, okay, we might cover a little more than 7 through 11, but maybe not. I don't know. We're not really on a schedule. We can just kind of go through the process as we go through the process. If you have questions, I am monitoring the 2 Facebook pages and the YouTube page. So if you have a comment, you can throw it on there. The best way to do that very simply is if you have my phone number, just send me a text. And I'll probably see that quicker than I will see a comment on Facebook or YouTube, just simply because I need to really look away to be able to see those. So hope all of that makes sense. Again, thanks for being in the class tonight. We're going to look at, get the text up here for you, 1 John chapter 2, verses 7 through 11. It almost sounds like when John writes this that he can't make up his mind. Is this an old commandment or a new commandment? He seems to kind of to waffle back and forth, but I think when we sit down and look at it, it's going to make complete sense of how he does that. So he writes, dear friends, if you're following along, by the way, I am on, I'm going to start reading right here. If you can see that and follow along on your screen, I'll be reading this section. Dear friends, I am not writing you a new command, but an old one, which you have had since the beginning. This old command is the message you have heard. Yet I am writing you a new command. Its truth is seen in him and you, because the darkness is passing and the true light is already shining. Anyone who claims to be in the light but hates his brother is still in the darkness. Whoever loves his brother lives in the light, and there is nothing in him to make him stumble. Whoever hates his brother is in the darkness and walks around in darkness. He does not know where he is going because the darkness has blinded him. So we're looking at that. It's like, okay, John, is this a new command or is it an old command? And again, when you first read that, it almost sounds like John is contradicting himself, or he can't really figure out if it's new or old. And also something about that is when I think, so I won't put we in there. I'll just say when I think, I'll use first person. When I see something that says command, I am usually looking for one very specific command. You know, I'm looking for a really clear direction. You might think about a command that your parents gave you. Maybe it's a command that you gave to a child, maybe a command that you gave to someone who works for you, or a command that someone that you work for gave to you. But typically in my world, when I think of a command, I am looking for a do this or do not do this. And when you read this section of John and he says, I'm not writing to you a new command, but an old one which you've had from the beginning. Sorry about that. And this old command is the message you've heard, yet I am writing a new command. it doesn't seem like John gives us a do this or don't do that. And so for John, when he writes commandments, sometimes he's not thinking like a do or do not. He's thinking in terms of a message that Jesus gave us, and a message that's going to shape the way that we live. So he calls this an old command. So when you look at this idea of it being an old command, sorry about that. I'm new back on trying to figure out all of these buttons as well. When we move from the office to my house, we change almost completely the way the whole setup is done. So it'll take me a little bit to get back in the habit of pushing the right button instead of the wrong button again. So sorry about that. So when John is looking at this and he's talking about living in the light, and we think, okay, he writes it that it's an old command, and he said, you've had it from the beginning. And a question that came to my mind just instantly when I read that is, from the beginning of what? I mean, is he talking about from the beginning of the world? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Is he talking about God's revelation to human beings? And if it is the beginning of that, is he talking about Adam and Eve, or what he told Abraham or Isaac or Jacob? From the beginning is from the beginning of the Old Testament law, the law that he gave Moses on the mountain, where certain things are written out, and we're going to look at those in just a couple of seconds. Or could he be talking about from the beginning, meaning from the beginning of the gospel that came through Jesus Christ? And all of those are very real possibilities, and I don't think we have to sit around and try to decide which one it is. I think what John is trying to say from the beginning, look, this is not something new. I mean, this is something that you have had as long as you've been a believer in Jesus. If you're Jewish, this is something that you've had from the time that you had the law. And honestly, it's something that's probably been there even from before the law ever came into being. So if you look at like a couple of Old Testament passages, do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against one of your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord, Leviticus 19:18. So all the way back in Leviticus, all the way back in the law that God gave Moses on Mount Sinai, thousands of years before, we have this same message about we're supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves. So when we grab the New Testament and we start thinking, oh man, I got to love my neighbor as I love myself, love my neighbor as I love myself, that's something really new. No, that's not something that's new at all. That's something that God has always communicated to humanity because of the love that God has for humanity. Or another Old Testament law that is from Leviticus 19:34, the alien living with you. So the alien, the one who's not Jewish, the one from another nationality who's living in your midst, must be treated as one of your native born. Love him as yourself, for you were aliens in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. You notice how many of those go back to I am the Lord your God? It'd be a great study one day for us to do. But back to this commandment in the law of Moses, the alien, the one that's living with you, you treat him as someone who's native born. Man, I don't want to get off on a tangent tonight, and I'm not going to do that. But if we just honored that commandment, if we just honored that statement from God, how much better would our world be? Treat people like they're native born, treat people, and even that second section, which is even so much deeper than treating someone as native born, love him as yourself. See, that message didn't come just through Jesus either. That message is all the way, it's old, it's from the beginning. So when he writes, look, you've had this message from the beginning, it's the message that you've heard, and it's been there the whole time. So it is an old commandment. But there's also something that's extremely new about it. So when he writes that and he says, but I am writing you a new commandment, its truth is seen in him and you. Now, that the phrase that we translate in him, it could mean in him, which I think it does, meaning Jesus, okay, in him. It could grammatically mean in it, meaning that it's in the commandment itself, but that just doesn't seem to make nearly as much sense to me. So I think it's in him, and I think that him is a capital H because I think it's referring back to Jesus. But it is a new commandment because something new has entered the world. See, before it was just a statement. Love those that's alien as if they were native born. Love them as you love yourself. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Those are just statements. And in those statements, you look around and maybe you have a really great person in your world that models that for you. Maybe the Jewish person who was living in Canaan, and there was someone who was not Israelite by birth, and they were living with them. Maybe they had a really good mentor to show them exactly what that relationship would look like. But now something completely new has entered the world. And the thing that is completely new that has entered the world is Jesus, the Son of God in the flesh. So now we don't just have a commandment. We have that modeled in God's perfect Son. So that truth is seen in him. So it is a new command in the sense that something new has entered into the world. Something new has shown up to give us a new perspective and a new understanding of this command. So the truth is seen in him. It's that connection to the love of Jesus and to the newness of Jesus and to his example. It's the way that he loved others as he loved himself. It's the way that he gave himself on the cross for the sins of the world. It's the way that he talked to the Samaritan woman at the well, or the communication he had with a woman who was caught in the act of adultery, or Zacchaeus when he came down from the tree, even in his interaction with Pharisees and Nicodemus. And it is the love of God shown in the world, but shown in a very, very new way. And he says, in him and in you, because as believers in Jesus, now we reflect out that message of Jesus, the trueness of God's love shown in Jesus. We are reflecting that into the world. The way he walked is the way that we're supposed to walk. The way that he loved is the way that we're supposed to love. Now, I know we're humans and we fall short, but that's still our goal. That's still our purpose. So you've had that. It's a new commandment. The truth is seen in him and in you. And even that statement that he makes here, like the darkness is passing and the true light is already shining. So something's pushing the darkness away. And the thing that is pushing the darkness away is the true light that's already shining in the world. And the true light is Jesus, and the true light is the church that reflects the nature of Jesus. So you've had it from the very beginning. It is this word that is within you. And even when you think about that concept of the word, in some ways, John uses that as in the beginning was the word, right? And he uses in a way that it's Jesus as the word. And in other ways, we see the word as just the written text. It's the message that we have from God that's written down for us. And so in John chapter 2, verse 8, yet I'm writing you a new commandment, is truth is seen in him and in you, because the darkness is passing away and the true light is already shining. So Jesus comes along and he gives us a message like this. And even though it's an old command, because we've already seen in Leviticus, it's an old command to love your neighbor as yourself, but Jesus comes along and he says, okay, a new commandment. So I'm giving you something new. So that's what John is referring to here. Yeah, it is a new commandment, because the commandment is love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. And that's the new part. The new part is the reality of what that looks like in Jesus. And that's the challenge. And we get into our world and we're thinking about love and how to love one another. And if we go back to the text, John is so incredibly simple and immensely complex all at the same time. So to help us understand this about love, he says, anyone who claims to be in the light but hates his brother is still in the darkness. Whoever loves his brother is in the light, and there is nothing in him to make him stumble. We're going to come back to that in just a second. But whoever hates his brother is in the darkness and walks around in the darkness. He does not know where he's going because the darkness has blinded him. So you want to have really clear understanding of if you are in the light, if you are in God's teaching or not. It's very simple. He says, if you claim to be in the light but hate your brother, you're still in the darkness. If you love your brother, you live in the light. And it's really just that simple. I mean, what is your relationship with, and when it says brother, it's not being gender specific. In English language and in other languages, if you want to include everybody, usually you use a masculine pronoun. Now, I don't want to get into all of that. I don't know that much about English, to be honest with you. I just know that that's the way that it works most of the time. So when he says brother, he is not talking about just males. He is talking about everybody who is a believer in Jesus. And so we get into our world and we start thinking about that, and we get these, I don't know, in our world, you just look and there's this struggle between love and hate. And I think, maybe we just honestly talk about that for a second. It's possible to defend the truth and deny love at the same time. It's possible to defend the truth and do that in love, and that, that tension is not theoretical in our culture. It's very visible, and it's very loud. It's very normal for our culture to speak out in ways that very honestly, in some ways, are hateful toward other people. Now I know when somebody says something that I strongly disagree with, I know there is something that rises up inside me. I mean, sometimes maybe it's frustration, maybe it's suspicion, I don't know, maybe it's contempt, but disagreement is just disagreement. It doesn't need to rise to the level of identity. Not looking at a person who just holds a position. It's a person is not something that we're trying to defeat. We handle those disagreements with dignity and character and love. And I mean, so many times in our world, it just seems like we just shift so quickly between love and hate and the way that we relate to other people or what we say about other people. And that's not the love that God wants us to reflect into the world. I mean, now the cross of God, it's not God being compliant, but it's God loving the guilty, and it's the love that saved me, and it's the love that saves you. And my responsibility is go into the world and love everyone in the way that Jesus loved everyone. And I know that's a challenge, right? And it's not easy, and it's very hard, and it's a struggle. So the question, I guess, for me is not if we hold convictions. The question is how do we hold convictions? Like Paul said in Ephesians, can we speak the truth in love? It's truth. Truth without love becomes very harsh, and love without truth becomes pretty sentimental. The gospel refuses both of those distortions. We're not, when we engage someone who disagrees with us, we're not just entering into a debate. We're encountering someone who is created in the image of God, for whom Christ's blood is sufficient, that in all of my interaction or your interaction with that person, the reality that that is a person that if they're outside the body of Jesus, if they're not believers in Jesus, there's a reality that should slow our tone and purify our motives about that, and it should remove mockery from us, because we're to interact with them in a way that we show the glory, the love, and the nature of who God is. It reminds me of that passage where Jesus says, all people will know you're my disciples because you love one another. It's not the precision of our arguments. It's not by the sharpness of our rebuttal. The thing that's going to authenticate us is the love that we have for each other. So in our culture, maybe we expect outrage, but we're to have the patient love that becomes a testimony to who God is. As he writes that, I want to go back to something really quickly. He says, whoever loves his brother lives in the light, and there is nothing in him to make him stumble. Now, that phraseology is a little bit vague in the text. And when you look at that, the word that's used there that we translate, and that was the NIV 1984 that I was reading from, and it translates this word causes him to stumble. So a scandalon it's the crooked trigger stick of a trap. So it's where you would build a trap, and you would affix the bait to this this crooked trigger stick, and that's the thing that springs the trap. So it means, in a way, to catch something in a trap, and it's and sometimes metaphorically it means to bring spiritual death. So when it says there's no scandalon, there's no trap in him. So when John writes that, does he mean there's nothing in him to make himself stumble, or there's nothing in him to make someone else stumble? So who is the person that's going to stumble? I think both are very possible. If I don't love my brother, if I don't understand how the love of God for others is to be reflected in me, then it would be very easily within that context for me to do something that would really kind of cause me to lose my spiritual identity or who I am, because I'm not addressing someone in the kind of love that God wants me to. So it could be that I make myself stumble, because I make myself stumble by not being who I should be. Now, the other part is that I could, by not acting in love, cause somebody else to stumble. If I fail to maintain the love and the response required by God, I can kill others, because instead of attracting them to the truth, I repel them from the truth. I was thinking about this today, and I remember when I was a kid, and we had I had a couple of magnets, and I would like to take the opposite ends, and you try to put them together, and it just repels them across from away from each other. And very honestly, there have probably been times in my life that my reaction to somebody was of the type that I didn't attract somebody to Jesus in the way that I responded. I probably repelled somebody from Jesus. And in that case, I would be causing someone else to stumble. I think probably because of context and what John is saying, it's more likely that John means I won't make myself stumble, because if I love my brother, I won't have a cause for stumbling within myself. But the other is also a possibility if you ever run across it. I think probably for us, it's good to keep both of those in mind. It makes me think of something John wrote in John chapter 4, and we'll get there later with the study, I know, but it fits really well right here. If anyone says, I love God, yet hates his brother, he is a liar. For anyone who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. Well, that is a really powerful verse. I mean, if you claim that you love God, but you can't love those that you see in the world, you're really a liar. You don't love God. And one of the things I love about John in First John is, he shows the difference pretty clearly. He doesn't mind saying, hey, if you say this and you do this, you're a liar. And so I think we should really take that to heart. When Scripture is that incredibly clear, I think we should take that to heart and if make sure that you love your brother, those that you can see. And there's this really cool comparison between two sects, and we're not going to go back and read that, but it said that whoever claims to be in him must walk as he did. And in verse 11, it says, but whoever hates his brothers in the darkness and walks around in darkness, he does not know where he's going because the darkness has blinded him. So we're either walking in the path of God, where we're walking in the light and we're walking in the example of Jesus, and we know exactly where we're going, or we think we know where we're going and we're in complete darkness. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried that or not, or if you've got some personal example of when you went out and you tried to walk in complete darkness, but I'm telling you, it's not an easy thing to do, is it? I think about times when we were kids and we'd go coon hunting with my uncles, and everybody had a light, but I didn't have a light, so I kind of walked with their light, but right in front of me was pretty dark, although there was a little bit of light around. Or maybe when you've gone down into a cave and you can't see like any light at all, or think of a really dark, physically dark place that you've been, and the darkness just blinds us. But that's also true spiritually, because we can get in some really spiritually dark places and we can experience the same kind of blindness. And unless the light of Jesus shines through that and helps us understand exactly who we are and where we're going and our worth and our importance, then it's very easy for us to get caught in really, really dark places. I was thinking about all of this, and I thought about 1 Corinthians 13. We read it at weddings. We talk about it, and we talk about love is patient, love is kind, love is good. We talk about all of those kind of things. I want to try to get that on the screen for you real quick, but having a little issue with my computer here. Just got a message from Shaw that said, not doing Zoom, right? Yeah, no Zoom tonight. Just the live stream. There we go, right there. So if you go to 1 Corinthians 13, and it talks about the great love. We read that passage. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. It doesn't delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. And I know, we've used that at weddings for hundreds of years, and we will continue to use 1 Corinthians 13 for hundreds of years at weddings. And it's a very appropriate passage for that. But that's not the context of the passage. The context of the passage is how the church works together with various gifts and various skills and various talents, which are all given by God, and various spiritual gifts. And the way all of those spiritual gifts stay in perfect unity is love. It's when we love our brothers and we love our sisters and we love the members of our churches, and we are always working in a way that benefits them, and what they need and what they want is more important than what we need and what we want. And so when John says, if you say you love your brother, if you say you love God but you hate your brother, you're living in darkness. If you say you have fellowship with God but you hate your brother, you're lying. You're deceiving yourself. And I think that's the challenge. It's easy, I think, sometimes for us to say, oh yeah, we love our brothers. I guess what I would ask you to do, how about in those times of disagreement, or when you don't really see eye to eye about something, or you have a really strong opinion about something and somebody else has a really, really strong opinion about with the opposite viewpoint. I'm not asking you just to cave in and change your viewpoint, because there's probably a reason why you have your viewpoint. But can you always interact with that person in love? Even going outside the bounds of the church, when you interact with other people in the world, can you always interact with them with the same feeling of love? So if you go back to John, and we're not going to get further than that because I was trying to keep it around 30 minutes, and I'm about there, right? But if you go back to John, where we were reading, and he says, "Dear friends, I'm not writing you a new command, but an old one, which you have had since the beginning. The old command is the message that you've heard. It's the word that you have heard. Yet I'm writing you a new command. Its truth is seen in him and in you, because the darkness is passing and the true light is already shining. The true light of Jesus is already shining into the world." And even though we had a command in the Old Testament that said, love your neighbor as yourself, we never saw it modeled perfectly until we saw it modeled in Jesus. So Jesus comes along and says, love one another the way that I've loved you. And so that pushes the darkness out, because Jesus, the true light, has come into the world. If we claim to be in the light but we hate our brother, we're still in the darkness. Whoever loves his brother lives in the light, and there is nothing in him to make him stumble. But whoever hates his brother is in the darkness and walks around in the darkness. He does not know where he's going, because the darkness has blinded him. And sometimes I just wonder, how many times have we allowed the darkness to blind us, because we will say with such great enthusiasm and just such great commitment about how much we love God, but if someone were to stop and look at us, we probably don't love our brother. We don't love our sister. We don't love those members of God's family the way that we should. So I just ask you tonight, just kind of get out of the darkness and let's get into the light. Hey, thanks for joining in. That's about 30 minutes. That's what I was shooting for. I don't see any comments on, hang on a second. I can't see the YouTube comments down here. Let me look at those. Don't really see any comments on that. Shaw asked about the Zoom link. I addressed that at the beginning. I'm hoping next week I will be back to where I can put that Zoom link back in. I'd like to have people join in. I had it all figured out. The thing that I could not figure out is how to get the audio from the Zoom call into the Rodecaster video encoder. I just got to figure that out. This microphone is so much different than the one that I use at the house that it just didn't make sense quickly for me how I should do that, but I'll take care of it. Hey, thanks for joining in. I appreciate you being on the call. Appreciate you being here tonight. Glad to be back to be live streaming here and on a more consistent schedule. And I hope you have a great evening. And I will see you soon.